Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Man of Coal. Today it's going to be a little bit of a different video. Recently I've been posting a bunch of gameplay footage, just some Crucible highlights that I've had that I thought were either funny or that I thought were some good plays or a combination of both. And today what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of go over some of the different graphical settings that are inside of Destiny 2 Shadowkeep, and maybe which ones would be best for you if you were either running a 2 PC setup or a 1 PC setup. If you're running a lower end graphics card or a middle of the road graphics card or an extremely great graphics card, this is going to be the video for you. I'm going to go over all the different settings that you'll need in order to get the highest FPS or the best looking settings. We're going to go over all of that today. Just a reminder, I do stream a few days a week over on Twitch. My link will be in the description below. Let's get into the video. Really quickly, I'm actually recording this after I've already filmed the entire video, but I wanted to make sure that I mentioned this at the beginning of this video. So Bungie actually put out some of their requirements or some of their recommendations on what kind of PC parts that you should have in order to play this game. And so I'm going to put that somewhere over here in the middle of the screen for you. These are just recommendations. Obviously, the better that you have of these parts that I have shown on the screen, the better that you're going to be able to run the game. And so I just wanted to put that out there for those of you who are still new to this. Okay, back to the video. All right, so we're here in orbit. If you've never experienced Destiny 2 before, or if you've never really tried changing your graphics settings in Destiny 2, the easiest way to do it is to, if you're on keyboard and mouse, you can go to the escape button and go to open settings, or if you're using a controller on PC, which is what I do, you just hit the start button on your controller and it opens up your character screen here. Go all the way over to the gear icon. You can either click on it or you can tab all the way over to it, and we've got all of our settings here. So this first one that it defaults to is the controls setting. Whether you use a keyboard and mouse on PC or if you use a controller on PC, this is where your settings are going to be for all of those. I won't get too much into detail with this today, mainly focusing on video settings today. But this is where you would go if you wanted to change any of your sensitivities, or if for whatever godforsaken reason you do inversion on your looking. This is where you maniacs will go for that. So in order to get to your graphical settings, you can't really see it right now, but there's a video tab over here on the left. You're going to click on the video tab, and it's going to bring up all of these fun little settings here. Up at the top, this is actually a pretty important thing that you'll see here, VRAM usage, and it tells you how much capacity you have for your VRAM, which is on your graphics card, and it's telling you how much is being allocated from this game towards your total VRAM on your graphics card. And right now mine is sitting at about 2600, and my total is almost 6000 for my graphics card. Right now I'm running an RTX 2060 inside my PC, so this is what it should look like for you if you are running a 2060 RTX. It's even got a nice little usage bar here. So obviously, depending on what settings you use, whether they're better settings or lower settings, this number right here on the left will either go up or down. The farther down that you go, the more settings that you have, or the more, I guess, space that you have that you can use towards streaming if you're doing a 1 PC setup and you're trying to both stream and play on the same PC. The lower number this is, the more resources you'll have for streaming. Okay, so at the top here, this is all personal preference for window mode. Full screen is the default. Full screen is what I use. I would probably use that. Other than that, it's totally up to you what you want to use. Resolution. This is all going to depend on what kind of monitor you have. So if you have a monitor that's a 1920 by 1080, or if you have a 4K monitor, or if you have a whatever, this is what you're going to set it to, depending on what kind of monitor you have. I have a 1080p monitor, so this is what it's going to be set to. VSync, turn it off. You don't want that. Frame rate cap enabled. I have this set to off. It's the default. Just don't mess with it. Don't need to. Frame rate cap is default, set to 200. If you really want to, you can turn this on and set it to whatever you want your cap to be, but I just turn it off. I don't bother with it. Field of view. So there's a lot that goes into field of view, actually. The higher that your field of view is, the more that you're going to be able to see on your screen. However, if your field of view gets higher, it's going to use more of your graphical settings, your graphical resources. So depending on what kind of graphics card you're running, if you're running a lower to a mid to lower graphics card, you may want to crank down the field of view on this setting here to kind of save up on some resources. I have mine set to 98. I used to have it all the way up. I've just been tinkering with it for a little bit, so right now mine's at 98. I think the max is like 105. Yeah, 105. So I'm gonna put it back down to 98. Screen bounds. If you click on screen bounds, it's going to bring up this nice little screen, and you can adjust it accordingly to how your monitor is set up. So this is what mine is at. Brightness, this is where you can adjust brightness, obviously. Graphics quality. So there are, depending on what graphics card you're running, you're more than likely going to want to keep this on custom. Okay, if you just don't really care, or if you really have no idea what these settings are doing, and you just don't understand what's coming out of my mouth from this video, you have different presets here for your graphics. So you can hit a low and it will crank all of your graphical settings down to low. If you want medium, it'll put them all to medium, and so on and so forth. This is totally up to you, but you're probably going to want to do custom. For anti-aliasing, now I've heard a ton of different things on anti-aliasing. I don't even really know what it does, to be honest, but everything that I've researched and everything that I've seen has always said to put it on SMAA. I don't really know what that means either, but if you know what you're doing and you know what anti-aliasing is, you can turn it off if you want to. I have mine set to SMAA. Moving forward, screen space, ambient occlusion, HD, AO, or HDAO. This can either be set to this or off, whichever one you prefer. It's only going to matter about a couple frames per second, so whether you have it on or off isn't going to really determine how much GPU is being used. Texture and anisotropy, nailed it. The higher that this number is, the more detailed that your game is going to look. So if you have it all the way set to 16 times, which is what I would recommend actually, it's going to make it a little bit more detailed. Otherwise, you can turn it off and it'll save you some VRAM usage up at the top. Texture quality. This is going to make the biggest hit to your VRAM usage if you're trying to get higher FPS or if you're trying to make it look better. So if you have it set to lowest, it's going to crank your VRAM usage down a ton. As you can see, I was sitting up at around 2600 and I cranked it down to lowest, and now it's at 1100. So depending on what kind of graphics card you have, again, obviously, depending on how many frames you want to get in this game, which I recommend a high amount, you're going to want to put it to whatever you are able to. Shadow quality, you can honestly just turn this on lowest. I really don't use shadows in the games that I play. This is just set to medium because that's what my preference is. But if you're trying to get higher FPS, crank it to lowest. Depth of field, I would put it on high. This isn't really going to affect much of your VRAM usage. Again, just a personal preference thing. Environment detail distance, again, not going to affect your VRAM usage much here. I just put it on medium. Character detail distance, I would recommend putting this on high. Definitely for if you're playing Crucible. Not so much PvE because it wouldn't matter as much, but PvP, it'll give you just a little bit more detail when you're trying to either snipe, or if you're playing on a bigger map and you're trying to see farther out distances, this is going to help with that. Foliage distance and foliage shadows distance. This is like all the greenery and shrubs and trees and all the different plants that you see out in the game. It's going to, either make it very detailed or not very detailed. So if you want better FPS in your game, you're going to want to crank these down to low. Light shafts. Don't really know what light shafts is, but I have it set to high. It's either high or medium. Again, probably doesn't matter much in FPS wise, but I have it on high. Motion blur. I actually have motion blur off. Some people keep it on. I prefer to have it off. Motion blur is essentially when you're turning from left to right, or if you're shaking your screen, you're either going to have this blur, this realism or realistic effect of when you turn, you're going to see a little bit of a blur. I turn it off just for PvP purposes. I won't get that blur on the screen for when I'm turning really fast. Wind impulse, this is going to be like a 1 FPS difference whether you have it turned on or off. Doesn't really matter. Totally up to you. Render resolution, you want this at 100%. HDR, This totally depends on whether you're using full screen or not using full screen, but the default is off. Just leave it off if you don't really know. Chromatic aberration is on by default. This essentially means when you're aiming down sights on your reticle, there's going to be a little bit of a blur that's around your reticle when you're aiming down sight. If it's on, that means that it's going to be a little bit blurrier. If it's off, that means that it's going to not be as blurry. So total preference for you there. Film grain, turn that off if it's on, but it should be off. Let's just do some of the other settings really quick. Sound, this is going to be right below the video setting on the left here, but this is where you're gonna want to do all your sound. I always prefer to have the music off. I love the music in Destiny, but it's just so damn loud. Whenever you open up a menu and for streaming, it just causes a whole bunch of chaos in my eardrums, so I just prefer to have it off. The other thing that some people do is for voice chat, the team voice channel, they choose to manually opt in, or you can do push to talk. It's, you know, whether or not you're gonna use game chat or voice chat in the game, totally up to you. I guess I should title this video totally up to you, because I feel like I said that like 50 times in this video, but you guys are smart, you know what to do. All right, the last tab down on the bottom here is gameplay, and this is where for all of our colorblind friends, this is where you'll be able to switch your colorblind preference depending on what type of colorblindness you have. Your HUD opacity, whether it's very transparent or very opaque, that's where you're going to be able to adjust that. Subtitles are going to be here too. You can actually change the color of your reticle. I choose to have it neon green so I don't miss. Helmet, you can choose to whether or not you want your helmet on or off in the tower or in social spaces. I always choose to have it on because I want to hide my ugly face. Invite notifications are on. I'm not sure if this is related to Steam still or not. As of the recording of this video, obviously Shadowkeep is on Steam now instead of Blizzard. So I'm guessing this has to do with getting Steam notifications. Not 100% sure on that. FPS display. Some people like having their FPS displayed up in the top corner here. This is what the little neon green number is. Just kind of see how their PC's performing. All of these other text chat things, I'm not going to go over a ton of them. It's totally up to you. Well, that's going to do it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this informational. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Again, I do stream every few days over on twitch.tv/manofcole. Link will be down in the description. And thank you so much for watching.